So just diving down deeper into our actual drugs. So IHL 42X, the obstructive sleep apnea drug, as you can see, this drug is currently under patent submission over the next few weeks and months, and we'll be formulating this drug to determine what is the ideal structure of this drug to deliver the effect that we want. And that had those characteristics that I spoke about before. Immediate onset, slow sustained release, rapid offset, clean washout, allows a patient to drive the next day. The TMJ drug, again, being formulated in a special way. Until the patent's lodged, I'm unable to give too much in the way of detail, but all that will be disclosed over the coming weeks. The traumatic brain injury drug, as you can see from this diagram here, where it's a solid line, the patent's been lodged. And so I can actually go into that in quite a lot of detail, but this is a world first, so I'll get onto that slide a bit later on. The gingivitis drug, now that's already pre-formulated and it's already in a finished dose form. So that's going to be tested as part of our phase 2A study coming up in patients with severe gingivitis. And I'll get on to talking about that later in the talk as well. Okay, so one question that may arise is why have we picked such a diverse group of drugs? And there's some method to our madness, and I just want to quickly run through this before I dive into the actual drug topics a bit deeper. So generally what we've tried to do is pick targets which have no existing drug therapy available, so no existing pharmacotherapy. And the reason for that is we want to be first in class. And part of the reason for that from a scientific angle is it avoids you having to compare against an existing drug. So it's much easier to show clinical benefit in a patient compared to placebo, which is sugar pill, versus an existing drug which is already efficacious. So if I was to create a new drug for treating pain, then there are many good painkillers out there. I would need to show that my new drug is clinically significantly better than the existing drug, which is going to be very, very hard to prove. The sample size I would need in my studies would be in the thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of patients. So the ability to prove that is very, very challenging. If I'm treating a disease for which there is no medical treatment whatsoever, I'm comparing myself to a placebo. The sample size is small, the trials are inexpensive, they can be fast, they can be rapidly accelerated. And commonly there's lots of government schemes, both in America, Europe, and also in Australia, where the government will subsidise or pay your filing fees and accelerate them. So you may have heard of programs known as orphan or breakthrough programs or various other priority registrations, where the government accelerates your research because they feel it's a massive unmet need. Next, there's a commercial consideration. We've only picked areas where we feel the value of the therapeutic area is in excess of 1 billion. And we've picked that threshold because there's got to be a risk return here. Everyone knows drug discovery is risky. Everyone knows that not all drug discovery is successful. But having said that, if the pot of gold at the end is sufficiently valuable, then for a commercial organisation like IHL, the risk reward is well weighted in its favour to do so. As mentioned before, one of the additional benefits of targeting a segment which has no existing drug treatments available is that you can actually access public subsidies at the end of the road. If you now say that we've got a drug therapy that improves, for example, sleep apnea, there's no existing drug tablets out there for sleep apnea. Now patients can have this medication in favour of, say, a CPAP mask. It's likely that various different public health bodies around the world, NHS in the UK, PBS in Australia, may give you a good run when it comes to applying for public subsidies. Next, global export potential. One of the limitations which releasing a drug which is purely under the special access scheme is that's unique to Australia. You can't export that overseas. You can't rely on that. We're a 25 million population country. The numbers aren't going to be big enough to make it a very, very viable business. Where if you've got a registered drug, you can operate under the FDA scheme in the US, North America. You can operate under the EMA, the European scheme, and you've got access to hundreds of millions of patients, a much larger patient population, and certainly a much larger revenue potential for your business. Most of the drugs that we're targeting will have accelerated commercialization potential, and this will be mainly determined by the registration body in the country that we're making the applications for. So as I said, the European Medicines Agency, the EMA, the FDA, the Food and Drug Association of the US, they've all got appropriate acceleration schemes for novel drugs. The next thing, this is probably the most critical statement, if there's probably the one take-home message for today, is that we've only picked drugs for which there's already substantial anecdotal evidence available to the public where these drugs are being used by patients themselves for those disease topics. There is already thousands of patients who have TMJ dysfunction who are using cannabinoids just by their own therapy. In countries like Canada and the US, where you can buy it over the counter, they're already sort of homegrown, doing their homegrown remedies for that, and many of them are reporting good relief. Similarly with sleep apnea, there's a lot of information out there showing that various types of cannabinoids, specifically dronabinol, has been shown to be beneficial for people with sleep apnea. So we're standing on the existing research that has already been done and has been shown beyond all reasonable doubt to be effective, and adding to that. So we're making incremental progress. And I think that reduces the risk from our perspective of picking a drug that's going to be efficacious. If we know that there's a body of anecdotal support for it, we can be more confident that there is going to be more support for it as it pushes through the drug pipeline. And the rest of the drugs that we're researching, one of the advantages that we feel is that because we've got access to Australian patients under the Special Access Scheme, there's a variety of things that we can do that can give both patients confidence and also the registration body's confidence that these are safe. So we can start getting real patients on these products, testing them out, and we can show, look, well, these are very safe products. Now, summarising all of that, it's a threefold business model. There's immediate term revenue, medium term revenue, and then there's pot of gold in the long term. The immediate revenue is obviously sales under the Special Access Scheme. We can bring cannabinoids, we can develop cannabinoids, and we can sell them under the Special Access Scheme to earn immediate revenue. Medium term, as we have more sophisticated products and we get further down the research pipeline, we can start selling those as well under the Special Access Scheme, even though they're more closely defined for specific disorders. And we'd hope that physicians would feel the need to prescribe these over existing general cannabinoid products because they are built for purpose. And then the long-term revenue is once we've got products that are registered with various different government bodies and even funding bodies, then we can start earning much more substantial revenues, hopefully under government subsidy schemes and also as doctors prescribe them. So we feel this is a very risk-diversified model. It creates short, medium and long-term revenue potential, and it gives the company a fighting chance to have good income to support the further research activities along the mid and long term. So I briefly mentioned this before. So Australia, in my opinion, is probably the best place to do clinical research in cannabinoids because of that special carve-out in the law. In addition, Melbourne specifically has always been punching above its weight in terms of the drug discovery road. We're probably one of the few places in the world that has universities and hospitals co-located where you can use the medical school brains and you can use the patients at the hospitals to work together to do drug research. In addition to that, we've got lots of government subsidies in terms of the R&D rebate, which are probably better than anywhere else in the world in terms of government co-funding of research. With the Special Access Scheme, we can get products to patients immediately and we can start doing we get inhuman data reporting from day one. There's no other country in the world where you can capture that. And fourthly, because we don't have a recreational system in Australia at the moment, what it does mean is that our placebos are very easy to find. We can find cannabis-naive patients who haven't already tried it recreationally, and that allows our recruitment for our clinical trials to be much easier and much more cost-effective. So based on that, I don't think there's anywhere else in the world which is as high a quality venue for doing clinical research into cannabis today.